Welcome to the Warrior Razor podcast. We're your hosts, Angela
and Carrie.
We all need help and support to stay future focused and challenged to courageously pursue the life God has called us to live. What we do matters.
Here on the Warrior Razor podcast, we seek Jesus first and use the skills, talents, and passions he has given us second. Hey everyone, welcome to the Warrior Razor podcast. I am so glad that you have chosen to listen to this episode. Today on the show, we have my good friend Heidy Tandy. And on the show, she just brings the best big sister vibes ever. She cheers us on, she throws down some truth bombs. You are just in for a really good episode full of truths about who we are in Jesus and what that means about the small beginnings that we may have in our lives. Heidy serves on the Stadia team as the Senior Director of Discovery. Through her experience in 18 years in higher education and church leadership, Heidy helps guide leaders to discern in the context of community, their calling, competencies, readiness, and role in starting a new church. She is also passionate about empowering women to thrive in church planting. Heidy has been married to her husband Josh for 18 years, and they have 2 children, Isaac, who's 11, and Clara, who is 9. That's the official bio. But let me just tell you, as a friend of Heidy, you will not meet a more authentic person. She loves Jesus and she loves to help those around her live into the calling that God has placed on their lives. So listen in today because it is all good stuff. Thanks for listening. Let's get to the interview. Here we are with our friend Heidy Tandy.
Well, welcome to the Warrior Razor podcast. I'm Angela Johnson. I have my co-host Carrie Smith with me this morning, and we are just so excited to welcome Heidy Tandy to the show. We've given a more formal introduction about you, or all of Carrie's favorite things about you, because you guys go way back. But I don't know you that well, and I know some of our viewers or our listeners don't know you that well. So will you just give like a quick little blurb about who you are and some fun facts about you?
Sure. Well, my name is Heidy Tandy, and I live in the Indianapolis area, northeast side in the town of Anderson. And I serve on the Stadia team, as Carrie said, as the Senior Director of Discovery. So I work with all kinds of potential new church leaders to help them figure out if leading and starting in a new church context is for them. And so my husband and I, we started a church in 2014 in the Cincinnati area across the river in Kentucky. And so that was, oh my gosh, almost 10 years ago, which is incredible. And so I love the local church and I love seeing people thrive in who God made them to be, including my people. So my husband, Josh, we've been married for almost 18 years and we have 2 kiddos, Isaac, who is 11, and Clara, who is 9. So that's my people. Oh, fun fact. Let's see. We were just talking before we hit record. I love to work with a candle, and I love to have my scents match the season in my house. So, I may have piles and piles of laundry, but I've got a candle lit, and that helps me feel like some semblance of order exists.
Peace. Yes.
Yep.
So I'm here for that. Carrie, you're a candle girl, right? I'm a candle girl.
I am. And from Heidy, I've learned that some of the very best candles are Aldi candles. Do not shake your fist or wag your finger at Aldi candles. They are stellar.
Yeah.
Crazy. You have an 11 and a 9-year-old.
Yep.
Carrie has an 11 and a 9-year-old, and I have an 11 and a 9-year-old.
There we go.
That's fun. And you mentioned Stadia. Now we had Val on our podcast previously. For those of us that aren't affiliated or associated with Stadia, do you mind giving a little just overview of what that is, so we just know where we're
Thanks so much for that question. Yeah, so I'm kind of head down in church planting world, but Yeah. So Stadia is an international organization that helps new churches thrive, grow, and multiply for the next generation. And
Okay.
so we do everything from helping potential new church leaders assess if church planting is for them, and then helping give them some recommendations on what to do in order to pursue what God is calling them to do. But then also project management. We also do cohorts and training for
Okay.
new church leaders as they get started. And then we help existing churches, networks, and individual investors figure out ways where they can help new
Yep.
churches thrive, grow, and multiply.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I love the tagline for that. So let's say somebody's listening. I know we usually do commercial kind of stuff at the end of the podcast, but if someone's got a heart or a dream or something within them that they're like, hey, I know somebody that wants to do a church plant, like you would be the person that they would potentially reach out to.
Yep, that's my world. I lead the discovery team at Stadia. Stadia.org on the launch and lead page tells you all about our process. And we know that we don't need just one more new church leader. We need a ton of new church leaders in order for the church to really serve this next generation well. And so our
Wow.
overall vision is that every child would have a church. And that's what I'm committing this season of my professional life to, and love getting to work with Stadia.
Love it. Okay. Thank you for that little
Yeah.
commercial.
Love
Little
it. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Carrie, I'll let you take over now. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what we're talking about leads straight in to why we wanted to have Heidi on this series of our podcast, which right now we are in the thick of talking
Mm.
about small beginnings, starting something new, starting right, just taking the first step to go. So, you've helped people navigate that,
Mhm.
right? You've helped um, provide questions, provide steps, provide ways for people to navigate starting something, specifically starting churches. You and Josh did that yourself, so you've got experience with new things, right? And small beginnings, taking that first step. So when you are um, I'll use the word coaching or helping people navigate that world. What have been some of the biggest obstacles? And this is when I was writing this question, I thought, man, both real and perceived,
Yep.
because there are
Oh, that's good.
absolutely real obstacles in our way. But there are
Mhm.
some that are just plain not reality, and we just think they're there. So, what are some of those obstacles, both real and perceived, that you think really hinder people with your experience from starting something, from taking that first step?
Sure. I love this question. And I love that you made the distinction between real and perceived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first one that I want to share is likely both.
Yeah. Okay.
So real and perceived, I think leaders think they have to do it or should do it all by themselves.
Mm,
Mm.
We work in Stadia with this group of, we call them new church leader competencies. And they're 20 different skill areas that we have determined help really lead to a new church's success, having these competencies. But what I always say is that we are not looking for the perfect leader. We have one perfect
Mm.
leader in the world,
Mm.
and that's Jesus,
yeah.
right?
Amen.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so our goal is not to be a perfect 20 church leader competency leader.
Mm,
Our goal is to be more like Jesus.
That's
And
mm,
good.
so ultimately, I think leaders really struggle with thinking, I have to have it all together. I have to be good at everything. I have to work so hard. I have to do all the things. And if I don't, then maybe I'm not called,
Mm.
or maybe I'm not competent, or maybe I'm stepping outside of where God might have me because I don't have it all figured out. And so I think the first thing is that I have to do it all by myself. And if I don't have it all together, if I don't have all the skills,
so good.
all the strengths, then I potentially shouldn't step out, be brave, do what God is calling me to do.
Man, I think that translates with whatever you're trying to do because I mean, yes, you're speaking from the wheelhouse of church planting world, but we're within Warrior Razor, we have women that come to us from all different spaces and just dream planting
Mhm.
places. I mean, we've got women who have done wardrobe styling to thinking about maybe starting a food truck to nonprofit in the foster care realm to turning over a business and then trying to start from the beginning. And I think you come to the table with all these ideas, and it's like you get sometimes paralyzed to move
Yep.
forward because you think that you have to have all the pieces to the puzzle before you even begin. And then I think that just really prohibits a lot of women specifically from even taking the next step to do the thing because they're not fully ready in their own minds.
Yeah. Isn't
Sure.
there
Or
isn't there a statistic that like men, if they would read a job description,
Yeah.
even if they don't fit 100% everything, they'll still apply? There's some
sure.
statistic where women like won't. Either they meet everything or and they apply, or they don't meet everything and they don't even try. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it is in women specifically, but yeah.
Yeah, we think that we have to have it all together. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And I think both men and women struggle with having potentially an idea of leadership or a leader in
Mhm.
mind, and if we aren't like that leader or don't have a specific skill set that we think is leadership,
Yes.
then
Mm,
we disqualify ourselves. Now, I
that's
think
good.
women and men struggle with that differently,
Yeah.
and obviously I think there's some, you know, limitations in our world that make a woman's experience unique, but ultimately I think the more, and this leads into the second thing I'm thinking about your
Mhm.
original question, Carrie,
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
the more we think we have to be like somebody else
Mm.
or be like a leader that we have in our own mind, the less we are really leaning into where God has called us. Because the number one thing that I literally am learning in my seat of leadership over the last 2 years is that when I show up as my full self,
Mm.
who God has called me to be,
Yeah.
my communication style, my empathy, my Enneagram 2-ness with all its feelings that are part of who God made me to be. That is when I am my best self. That's
Ah,
when I
yes.
my sweet spot of leadership, not when I'm trying to uh, be more of a dominant leader than I am, or not when I'm trying to act like I don't have any feelings at all. That is not what God has asked me to do.
Right.
It's interesting that you talk about the comparison of what a model leader looks like in our mind, this platform leader that we have put on this pedestal in our own individual minds. Literally, Carrie and I had this conversation at a retreat that we were holding, and a woman was like, and she was speaking specifically to being a part of recovery victims from the sex trafficking world, and she herself has been a survivor. So she's walked the lifestyle, lived the lifestyle, can speak to it and
Yeah.
coming out of it and the hope and the restoration just directly, right? Her life is a living testimony of it. But she was commenting about some
Mhm.
of the other leaders that facilitate the dialogue and the conversation. She's not as well spoken as them. And
Mhm.
so sometimes she feels like she doesn't compare in as highly as these other women. And so Carrie and I were just sharing, like, you know what? Comparison can kill a calling. It
Mhm.
really can.
Mhm.
However, comparison can also, if it's done in a really a beautiful way, you can look at what other people are doing, model healthy behaviors, and then take from them what you want to do and how things you want to implement it with your own spin on it, with your own flair, your own personality.
Yes.
So comparison in and of itself is not inherently wrong. I
Right.
think though when we allow it to just be like, oh, this isn't a mirror that I see when I'm reflected back on myself. Like I don't look anything like that person, so let me not touch that. So I
Right.
think it's really important what you're talking about specifically in terms of comparing ourselves to other leaders, that we have to have our own voice, our own Enneagram too. I'm an Enneagram too. I'm all in my feels. I've disqualified myself a lot because I'm like such a high feeler, and I'm like
Mhm.
I just can't get it together sometimes. I don't know. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
I just heard a reframe about emotion from my friend Mike Tooley, who I've done some professional coaching with. He in an email exchange over the last couple weeks shared, because I was sharing about how I showed up in a conversation with all of my feelings, and I was able to communicate in such a way that if I wouldn't have had all my emotion in the conversation, the message that I was trying to communicate wouldn't have come across in the
that's
way that I
good.
wanted. So it was a benefit. And so
Mhm.
I was, reflecting on the situation with him. And he said that he wishes often when we talk about emotion, we should reframe it as passion. So, so
Mm.
much of my emotion and my feelings and even my tears,
Mhm.
which show up often in ways that sometimes I'm like, "Oh, was that too much?"
Mm.
No, like, that is my passion coming
Mm.
out, and um, my my way that God has literally wired my body
Yes.
to respond, and, I don't wanna shut that down
Yeah.
anymore in my
Yeah.
life because that is a
Mhm.
superpower. That is not um, that is
Preach.
a weakness. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
like
a
who are
superpower.
yeah, and who are we to say the way that God has created us. I'm not saying we don't try to improve, that we don't try
Correct.
to,
Of
all
course.
those things.
Yeah,
We
we hear
hone
you.
our craft, we work towards honing our craft. We want to be good leaders. We read the books, we do the things, but not at the expense of us looking at God and wagging our finger and saying, "Why didn't you make me like fill in the blank?" Right?
Yeah.
Like, who are we to say that to God? I love this embracing the way that God He has created you as you hone the craft of leadership and not letting that stop you from what He's calling you to do. Oh, that's so beautiful. This is
Yeah.
such
Somebody
a good
needed to
one,
hear
Heidi.
that. Somebody
Yeah,
really on the other end of this call watching,
yeah,
whatever, and they needed to hear that. That gives
yeah,
them permission to be the unique masterpiece that the Lord has created them to
yeah.
be. But to your point, Carrie, but that doesn't mean we stay where we are.
Of
Right,
We want to
course.
speak
right,
more and more like Jesus
right.
every day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I'm thinking about how can that comparison piece like you're talking about, Angela, how can that lead to a posture of learning, not a
Mm,
posture of
Right.
of
hindrance.
putting
Yeah.
ourselves down. Hindrance, yes, for sure.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so, oh man, I really appreciate the way that she speaks from up front, or I really appreciate the way that she stops and pauses in conversations of facilitation, those kind of things. So, how can I put my spin on that? How can I
Mhm,
learn from that?
mhm, mhm.
And I think we probably can't learn from everyone. And
True.
so
Mhm.
sometimes I think we have all these voices. Well, I'm going to take this and this and this. And then
Mm,
our brains are just confused with all the things that we need to change and be and
yeah,
do. And Carrie, you
right.
and I have talked about this offline.
Yeah.
I love the language that has emerged from Kendra Adachi's Lazy Genius book
Mhm.
about how we are not a project, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, that's good.
I'm not just a project to improve.
Yes.
I can learn. I
Mhm,
should learn, right? That's a healthy should.
mhm.
Um, but I have to learn who are the people that I really want to learn from, not I want to
Yeah,
learn from everyone because
yeah.
some folks we shouldn't learn from.
That's
And
right.
we can't we have so much access right now to all the books and all the podcasts and all the blogs and
Yeah.
all the tools.
Carrie and I have this thing where she's a high consumption of content person, as am
Yeah.
myself. But I don't know if you're in that same realm, Heidi. But if I know Carrie has heard of somebody else, I'll text her. I'm like, hey, I've heard about this person. What do we think about her?
Mhm.
Like, I was getting some content on this book or whatever. What do you think about it? So I'll get this because we
Yeah,
don't have time to absorb
yeah,
everything. There, like you're
yeah.
saying, there's so much out there, and nor should
Mhm,
we.
mhm.
And we've talked about. I don't. If I might start a book or whatever, and then I hear something, I'm like, no thanks. I don't need to
Yeah,
finish it. So
yeah,
no, not
yeah.
for me. Yeah,
Well, and it also speaks to, as Jesus followers, not everybody gets to tell us things,
yeah,
not everybody's wisdom is Jesus focused. So we need to, be mindful of that as well. Yeah.
And sometimes, unfortunately, voices become too loud for us, and those voices end up taking the place of the Holy Spirit.
man.
And I'm not saying that from judgment, I'm saying that from a place of learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
That when I am listening to the wrong voices or consuming too much content and not allowing the content that I really need
Mhm,
to permeate my mind and my body
mm,
and my spirit,
mhm.
Yeah,
then I become an imbalanced
That's good.
version of myself.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
It's like
really
speaking to that.
the pressure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good. No, I'm done.
No, I was just it's speaking to those spiritual disciplines
Mm,
that how we start our day, what we allow first things first into our minds, and yeah, it
that's good.
affects us. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 great obstacles so far. Any others that you want to share with that question before we move on? Heidi, for the as someone stepping into a beginning, a calling, what are some other obstacles that you've noticed or seen?
One big one, and this is kind of the last bucket that I've been thinking about for this question, and this relates to the first one of thinking we have to be all the things. If
Yeah.
we don't if we don't have to be all the things and all the qualities and all the leadership giftings, then that means if we want to do what God has called us to do, lead out, do something new, all of that, then we need people around us.
Yeah.
Mm,
And so often we look to ourselves to be the be all end all instead of empowering other people around us to
yeah.
do, to help, to lead, to serve, to grow,
Mm,
to tap on the shoulder, to say, I
mm,
can't do this by myself. Will
yeah.
you do this with me?
Yeah.
People want to be invited, friends. They want to be invited. And some folks don't know how to do that, and they are waiting for an invitation, and we can be that.
Yeah.
Do you have any practical examples of what that looks like for yourself personally or having walked through? Because I mean, I think that that's a good, I think that's a fabulous idea, but sometimes people just don't even know what that looks like in a tangible way
Yeah.
to put themselves out there. Do you have an example of that? I know I putting you on the spot. I'm
No,
sorry.
I have like 5 examples in my
Okay,
mind.
good.
I'm trying to
Okay.
think, maybe I'll give a couple, we'll see how this all fits.
Okay.
I think about the next generation of leaders of Gen Z, and particularly, my wheelhouse is new churches, and so I think about Micah Davis at the Sanctuary Church in Indianapolis. And so Micah is leading in a way where he is the visionary leader, but he is co-leading with I can't think of his exact title, but another leader named Jake, and they are pursuing a third staff member to lead a team of 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 leaders in the Broad Ripple community in Indianapolis, because they are saying, I can't lead by myself. And so we're looking for this model of leadership where all three of us have different skills, and we are going to lead this church together. There is no kind of top down leadership. This is flat. This is collective. And so
Right.
that's a church
Mm,
example.
Mhm.
I think practically of my marriage.
Mm.
And so Josh, my husband, he likes to be upfront. Has the teaching gift, the casting vision gift, but I am much better in a small group environment. And
yeah.
so when he sometimes does questions for a small group, he and this is we've had this conversation, we can share this. Um he struggles because he wants to do all like the deep philosophizing questions, and they each have 3 parts, and I'm given a question and I'm pausing,
Yeah.
allowing space. But
Mhm.
Josh and I also know that if we are tired
Mm.
and have a lot going on at home, we need hype people around us.
Mm.
That's
Um,
good. That's
Super
good.
high energy people that if we have a group of 20 college students over, I'm looking towards the high energy 22-year-old to do an icebreaker, so that I can use my best energy for the discussion.
That's
Mm.
great. That's
Yeah.
great.
So that's
That's
just a
good.
couple examples I'm thinking about.
So let me ask you this too, Heidi. So sometimes when God gives you a dream, a call,
Mhm.
not everybody's going to get it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you want to invite people in to help you carry that call, what advice or ideas do you have for like, who do you ask or how do you go about that? I think the easy answer is obviously we pray. We pray for people that are going to help carry that with us and understand that calling, whether it's church planting, whether it's starting a cookie business,
Yep.
whatever that is. But but do you have any suggestions with that? Because it can be scary sharing that dream because sometimes you share that dream and people are like, that's stupid. Or
Yeah. I
that's,
mean,
Yeah.
that sounds like a lot of work. Why would you do that?
yeah,
Yep.
that's good.
So what
That's
do
a
you
good
have to speak to
question.
that with? Yeah.
First things, I'm gonna steal some of your language, Carrie. Not everyone's gonna get it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
put so much pressure on myself to if I just communicate in the best way, or if I'm so prepared,
Right.
sometimes people are just not gonna get it.
Mm.
And it takes two to tango, right? It takes it is no matter how much I convince someone, they may not be convinced. That's
Mhm.
really hard to live out. It's
It
easy to
is.
say, super hard to live out.
That disappointment's real and raw.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
real.
Mhm.
This side of heaven,
Mhm.
we live in an imperfect world
Yep.
where we might be missing something in our leadership, or they may be on a different path or a different journey. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean that either of us is right or wrong.
Mhm.
That just means our paths might be different and they may not be aligning
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So we can't go for batting 1,000
Right.
with our asks, with our
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah.
Um, I think we have to be really sensitive to what the Holy Spirit is doing in somebody else's
That's
story.
good. That's
Um,
good.
as we are communicating. Um, and that helps us pray for divine coincidences.
Mm.
But then that also helps us let go when it doesn't go how we think it needs to go. So we
That's
do the
so
work, right?
Yep.
We do the work, we do the preparation, we do the visioning, all of that. But not everybody's going to be, not everyone's going to be into it.
Mhm.
Um,
I
yeah,
think the sting of it is sometimes when the people that are closest to us that we feel like should be our biggest cheerleaders aren't. I
Mhm.
mean, we'll just get real. I mean, I have family members that have probably never listened to the podcast or never picked up the book that I've written, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, but their journey is their own. My journey is my own. Lord, you're calling me to do something, and it's okay that they hold a place marker in my heart and in my sphere of influence for a different purpose,
Mm.
and to have to really be okay with that. And the wrestle is real. I mean,
Yeah.
the feelings are real. And I think too, when we speak to the dream and we share the dream again, it's not everybody else's to get because he's calling us to it. So I think, but
Mhm.
to process those emotions aren't always
Yeah.
great and fabulous.
Yeah.
But that's why it takes just a one or two close people.
Mhm.
We don't have to have, like you said, we don't have to bat 1,000. You can.
Yeah.
I'm not good with the batting and the terminology for that, but what just to have one or two really like close people, I feel like that's then you can consider that a major win.
Mm.
Yeah. And let me
Yeah.
acknowledge that's so hard when the people closest to you, family, close friends, don't have that buy-in
Yeah.
when you are so passionate about a thing, a cookie
Mhm.
business,
Mhm.
a new venture, a podcast,
Yeah.
that's really painful.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's really important to grieve those things on our
Yeah.
journeys, to not
Grieve.
just act like
Ooh.
it doesn't mean something to us.
Yeah.
Um, but also there's a time to grieve and then there's a time to say, okay, I have I've done that work, and in order to be my best self and to do what God has called me to do, then I have to put that in a place where it doesn't drive the bus of my performance.
So good.
And
That's so good.
I can let hurt drive that bus so easily. Carrie, I've done so much work in the last 3 years about, grieving some things and grieving friendships that I thought would be a certain way, or, just leadership things that I thought would be a certain way. Um, and it is hard work. And you know what's so frustrating, Angela? When you think you've done all the work and then one day you wake up and it's just there. Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, today is gonna be a day where I'm gonna ruminate on a conversation that happened 5 years ago. This is great. I'm so excited to be doing this.
Fabulous.
This is
Fabulous.
great."
We're
Um,
just gonna sit in this one for a minute
yeah,
and
I'm
have a
like,
pity
"Gosh, why
party.
am I thinking about this in the shower? Like, why am I thinking about what I should have said?" Um, but I
Mm.
can honestly say, "God, I've done the work. Like,
Yeah.
it is coming up in my body today. I'm gonna acknowledge it. I'm not gonna act
That's
like it's,
good.
but I'm also gonna to acknowledge that I have done the work, that this is not new, that this likely will come up again, but it does not get to drive. The pain, the hurt, the grief doesn't get to drive
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Um, and
Mhm.
ooh, I can feel emotion coming up myself.
Yeah.
That is so
That's good.
hard, and I've had
Yeah.
to do it so often.
Yeah.
And I know I'm a better leader because I walk with that.
Mhm.
Um, but it
Yeah.
is so painful. It's so
Yeah.
painful.
It really is, and to have to constantly speak that truth back into your own from your mouth to your own ear about, I'm not being set aside. I'm
Yeah.
being set apart because not everybody can get on the bus with me to the next
Yeah.
destination. And like, I'm gonna open that door up. You can get off at this stop because have a good time. I
Yeah.
love you. I love you. I love you. But I'm headed to something else, and it's really hard to separate ourselves from that. I mean, that's real. That's real.
Yeah, it's real.
Definitely.
And
Ooh.
life is just complicated. It's complicated. I feel like the older I get, the less answers I have, and the more I crave heaven, not because I want a get out of jail free card,
Mhm.
but because I realize that because of um the imperfect world that we live in, it's not supposed to be this way. Brokenness and pain and relational hurt, it's not supposed to be this way.
Yeah.
um and this is where I think it's so important to lean on the God that is so much bigger and that
Mm.
has so much more perspective than what I have. I get so much peace from that right
Mm.
now these days. Like, I'm like, God, I don't know what you're doing,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna trust that you know what you're doing, because I sure don't. My
Mm.
perspective is so limited. I'm not in somebody else's brain or experience. And it's not to be shameful about myself, but some people experience us in ways that may not be our intention, but just are how they perceive us. And I cannot
Oh,
control
that's
that.
tough. I know
Oh,
that's
that's
tough
so
for some
hard. That's
people.
so, so
Yeah.
hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
Also, and this brings me, let me go back to the questions. We got
Yeah.
a little
No,
off
you're fine.
topic.
Yeah. That's fine.
But
We
if
roll. We roll with it.
if we think about who we need around us,
Mhm.
my friend Becca and I talk about this literally every week. We It's not that we need perfect people around us. We do need people, though, in our core circles, our safe people that are pursuing health.
Yeah.
That healthy leadership, healthy personal development, not perfection, not, where I'm not looking for perfect friends. But
Mhm.
if you're starting a new thing by yourself or with a small group, it can be really easy to let unhealth get in there and plant a seed and get thick roots down in an organization or a new thing, a business,
Mhm.
etc.
Speak to
Um,
that. What advice do you have? I mean, even I'm sure you've had it personally, but just in your experience of coaching other leaders, like what does unhealth look like that someone could be on guard for so they don't let the roots get down deep?
yeah, I think I love that question. First thing that came to my mind is, I think, interpersonal relationships, how
Mm.
people work together, how people communicate. If I even think sarcasm is an interesting place to start. I think often when we are harmful with our words, even when we're being sarcastic, I think
There's a little bit of truth in it,
there's a
right?
little bit of truth in that. And if
Mhm.
we're not careful, and Josh and I have learned this the hard way,
Mm.
um, it can be really hard to have a level of health if we're constantly speaking in sarcasm.
Yeah.
Mm.
If
Yep.
someone is speaking negatively about people behind their backs,
Mhm.
that's not health. That's not health.
Mhm.
Um, and because if they're speaking about someone else behind their back, they're likely speaking about you. And
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
there's
Very
a
good.
place for safe conflict resolution, safe people who can help you. But Josh and I have
Process. Yeah.
a really it's an important value for us, even in our marriage, that we don't talk negatively about one another,
Yep.
like, ball and chain language,
Right.
or my
Yep.
mean wife at home. Like, we don't even joke about that stuff,
Mm.
because often those jokes
Yep.
lead to deeper patterns
Mm.
of harm, or point to, oh yeah, we're joking about it now, everybody's laughing, but really not everybody's laughing.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm having an honest moment right now. I'm gonna self-disclose, but I'm feeling a little bit of conviction right
Okay.
now because in our marriage, Derek and I sometimes I've been calling him the professor lately because he
Yeah,
will just like lecture, and I'm like, dude, like you're not watching body language. You're soliloquying here for a time. And now, I mean, we get the joke, and we do have
sure,
a lot of humor in our relationship. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be calling him that because the kids will kind of be like, oh, here goes dad, eye rolling
yeah,
behind him. But also, I'm like, Derek, read the room, read the room. But
sure.
he's a good
Mhm.
sport about it. But also, I'm like, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And just
Mm.
it's just a check-in, right? It's a,
Yeah,
Yep.
oh, that may be
Yep.
something I need to watch.
Yep.
And
correct.
I
Absolutely.
think some of those things can point to places of unhealth.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Um,
like, let's have a deeper conversation. Like, are you
yeah.
not feeling just in this example with me and Derek? Like, are you feeling like you need to have more one-on-one with the kids, so you don't feel
Yeah.
like you have to have your microphone and your lectern up here about certain behaviors. I mean, we got 3 kids, it's a lot, so,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think that's a good point. It's a check engine light when you feel the sarcasm coming on, and a good opportunity to redirect and have a deeper conversation about something,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
use
it's
that
always
example,
good
I
to
don't know.
have. Yeah, it's always good to have those one-on-one checks where it's just like, "We good? Like,
Mm,
I said this, I wanna check my heart. I wanna check where
Yeah,
I'm and,
mhm. Yep.
um, once again, please don't hear me saying that I think people need to be perfect in order to walk with
no,
one, you know? But I just think it's really easy to choose the low road of relational health. The low road, what's easier is to say the thing behind someone's back. What's easier is to avoid the
mm,
hard conversation. What's easier is to complain to your spouse or you know, doom scroll because I don't want to acknowledge how that felt in my body to feel ignored in a conversation or to feel like my perspective wasn't valued.
mm,
I've had more hard conversations in the last 3 years than I have in my first 37 years of
Mhm.
life. Um, and I am a better leader for it because I have leaned in to the hard and not avoided it. I haven't handled every conversation well, but it is a muscle that I'm developing. Um, and it's made me healthier, and it's allowed me to proactively pursue relational health in my friendships because I've learned how to do it wrong.
Mhm.
And um I would rather check in and even over communicate than just live on the surface
yeah,
um
Right.
with my people.
Yeah. So good. So good. Well, let's go ahead and start kind of wrapping up here a little bit. I want because and I want our listeners to hear this because I have been the personal recipient of this from Miss Heidy Tandy. Um, you, I don't know that you would describe yourself this way. Let's say that. You you're a big cheerleader, and not in the fake rah rah sense. And maybe you would describe yourself this way, and I think maybe our listeners would too. You're a cheerleader in the realm of reality, right?
yeah,
So, and those are our best cheerleaders, right? Not the ones that are faking it, just telling us what we want to hear cheerleaders,
Yeah.
but the cheerleaders that have like, they know their stuff, they know the hard, they know even strategies to help you through the hard, and you're that type of person. So, I want from you, because you've done this for me, just your biggest cheerleading advice and soliloquy, if you will. We'll call you the professor here. Uh, for someone who has a dream on their heart, God has placed it there and they want to pursue it. What what are you saying to them, Heidi? How are you encouraging them?
Listen, I wish I had
mm,
something even, more profound or deep for this question. And I thought about it, before showing up today. And the two words that I think so often are be you. We've we don't need anybody else. We don't need your version of insert Christian famous woman here. We don't need your version of business leader down the street. We don't need your version of what motherhood might look like or
Mhm.
parenthood might look like. Um, or being, a single woman in her 30s might look like. Because I think we have we already have those examples, but we don't have you. We don't have your
yeah,
specific story. We don't have your specific calling. And we don't need you to be anybody else but yourself. And that's my cheer. That, in my world, it's starting new churches, right? We need all kinds of leaders to do that. We need all kinds of men and women who can really help a weary world find hope.
Mhm.
yeah,
um and just like I've learned in the last season that not every church is for every person, not every person is for every person. I am not everyone's cup of tea. You aren't, Carrie. You aren't, Angela, right? I want
right.
to be. I want everyone to love me, right? That's my
That's your
encouragement.
2, that's
Ramsey,
your
please love me. Please just love me, friends. But Not everyone is going to. And the faster we get okay with that, the more we can freaking run. Like, let's run because we are our full selves, not anybody else, not any even perceived something that we should be or we were, right? Some of us have to get rid of what we think we were, or
That's good.
we are always that maybe unconfident leader, or kind of step in the back. Like, if God has stepped you to called you to step forward, do it.
Yeah.
Go. You can be afraid. Like, you're gonna have some parts of you that are scared.
Yeah.
Um, but I've started ending a lot of emails right now. Let's keep going.
Oh, I
And
love
I
that.
say that for me just as
Yeah.
much as I say that for the person on the other end of the email. Let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Well, when
And
Paul called us to run the race, like, I
yes,
don't think we're all gonna be like, who's that super fast Hussein,
Oh,
Bolt?
yeah.
Like,
That,
we're not
mhm.
all gonna run like that, right? Some of us are
yeah,
gonna limp, some of us are gonna, like, have one leg that we're just dragging behind us, but it's like, our race is gonna look different for each and every one of us, but
Yeah.
the whole goal is to cross the line and to finish well.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let me yes and what you're saying. And the foundation of that, the foundation of this being your self, your full self, is that because you're your full self, as you are, you don't have to do anything else. You
Mm.
don't have to be anything else. You don't have to have a certain amount of people that go to your church, or business doesn't have to hit a certain financial level or education level or whatever. No matter if you don't do anything else, you are still as loved and worthy and honored
Yes.
and treasured
Mm.
by the divine.
Yeah.
And God doesn't want my performance. He doesn't want my perfection. He wants me. Um, and the more I can be like, you got me, the more
That's
I'm
good.
freed up to run.
Yeah.
That's so good. Ugh.
And I tear up at that because I'm an Enneagram 3 and I'm a wing 2. So I get you girls in that aspect. But with my propensity to achieve, not have weaknesses,
Mhm.
perform, 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 I needed to hear that personally. I can't outperform God's love for
Yep.
me.
Yep.
And you've said it to me a couple times before, Heidi, and thanks for saying it again today.
What people don't know is I often refer to Carrie as my husband because I am married to an Enneagram 3, who has some similar
Yes.
Carrie
Yep.
characteristics. So
Yes. I love that.
it's real.
We love it. We love the carries of our
That's
lives.
right.
Oh, Heidi, thank you so much for being on our show today. I've loved this conversation. I've been praying about who needs to hear it, and I know it's going to impact some people. So thank you for taking time to be with us and coming on to discuss these things with us.
Yes, I mean
So much.
the two simple words, I feel like, of all the things that you said, but the be you piece, I feel like that translates back to the very beginning of the conversation with the roadblocks and the hindrances or different things. But when we can be our truest self and who God has uniquely crafted us to be,
Yeah.
we can run the race unhindered a little bit easier today because of
Mhm.
your message. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be included in this conversation.
Yes. And to all of our fellow warrior raisers, aim your arrows well.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation, please go ahead and like and share it. You can also find us on www.warriorraiser.com.